Hi, this is Growing Up Aspen with Andy Collin and Chris Pomeroy, and today we're here interviewing Adam Kane, who I was yearbook photographer all the way to Hollywood cinematographer, producer, director. He's done a lot of films, Boondock Saints. He's worked on American Gods, the TV show, and he's here with us today. So here is Adam Kane. Yeah. Well, can you talk a little bit, because it's kind of, the process is kind of interesting, but can you talk a little bit about how you pitched American Gods?
How I got into that?
Yeah.
show?
How did that project come to be?
American Gods. Well, I knew Brian Fuller and Michael Green, who were the showrunners on that show in the first season, from other places. In fact, I met them both on Heroes, which was a TV show at NBC in 2006 through 2009. And I had been the cinematographer on the pilot. And I met both Michael and Brian there during the first season when they had a full writer's room. They were both involved in that show. And I directed my very first episode of television on Heroes in 2007. So when Brian broke out the next year with his own show, which is called Pushing Daisies, then I became the producer-director on that show. I eventually worked with Michael a few years later on a show he did for NBC called Kings with Ian McShane.
Yeah.
So cut to, it's 2016, and I was finishing up a show as a producer-director called Unreal with Constance Zimmer at Lifetime. And I got a call from Michael, who said that they needed a producer-director. They were in the middle of shooting the first 2 episodes of American Gods, and was I available? So that's how I got onto the show. It was a very difficult novel to adapt. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but
yeah,
it's a very passive story, where Shadow Moon is basically a voyeur watching this war play out between these gods that are embedded in society on Earth. But passive characters don't make great characters for TV shows and movies.
Right.
Like we want people that are active. So Brian and Michael really tried to make that character, who is played by Ricky Little. Ricky Whittle, as active as possible, which diverged from Neil Gaiman's concept, but it was all with his blessing, because Neil was involved in the show.
Right.
But it was a big swing, a big swing to be working on a show where you're taking essentially Nordic or Greek mythology and you're trying to marry it with social issues that are relevant to all of us today, with a ton of visual effects. Right. And a stupid amount of money being spent on every episode, and some of it worked and some of it didn't in the first season. But I'm proud of the work we did on that show, because I'd rather do shows like that where we really go for something extraordinary than to make just another police drama.
Well, I feel like on a lot of productions, you're the stagecoach driver, and you're sitting there and riding those horses. You got like 6 horses in front of you, and your job is to get that project across through the thing. And it, a lot of times if you don't wear a lot of different hats, it's really hard to sort of make something happen. And that's why I feel like a lot of times people just say, oh, I just want to do this. This is all I want to do. And if you're not the kind of person that can take on a lot more stuff, it's really hard to jump into something like that. And the truth is, once you're in it, it's so much fun, because you get a couple things down, got a couple systems in, and all of a sudden the machine is running.
Look, the one thing I'll say about the film business is that every job is different. No 2 jobs operate the same way. Yeah. Unlike perhaps a corporate environment where there's a structure to it, there are rules that involve overtime and those rules apply in film as well. But there's in the film business, I can say with pretty reasonable authority that there are different agendas at play on every single project, and nobody gives you a pamphlet as to what those are when you go in for the job interview.
Yeah.
So part of the job when you're senior management, which is what I'm considered, is that your job is to figure that out and to lead, like you said, like the stagecoach driver, right? So there's some people that drive the stagecoach by just trotting along at a reasonable pace, and there's some people that tear ass over the prairie.
Yeah.
I'm sort of the latter.
Yeah, I think it's fun to be the latter.
It's fun to be the latter, but I also feel like without confidence, you get nothing done. And my job is to not to deliver the status quo. My job is to take a big pile of money, which I've been entrusted to help spend, and be responsible for it, but deliver extraordinary footage on the other side of it.
Right.
Whether I'm producing another director or I'm producing for my own episodes when I direct television. And that requires risk. That has made me very valuable to some people, and like something to stay away from for others, because I don't want to do the status quo. And there's a lot of people in the television market, especially because it's a big market, that want somebody in and do paint by numbers and not question the system. And I'm just not that guy.
Right.
So often in interviews, I tell people, if you're looking for a yes man, I'm not your guy. There are plenty of people out there that will just tell you whatever you want to hear.
Right.
But if you want a partner who's going to push the project to be the best it can be within the parameters of what we have to spend, then maybe we're a good fit.
Right.
But I tell people right up front, because I don't want surprises later.
Right.
I don't want surprises like that,
Right.
And often, too often, I've had to say, remember that conversation we had when you hired me? Yeah. I'm the same guy.
Yeah.
But you're not doing what you said you were going to do. So and maybe that is different, maybe, than this generation. But, when you grow up in the 70s, and you grow up with filmmakers like Francis Ford Coppola and Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg, and people that buck the system, and that's your sort of model,
Right.
And bands like Led Zeppelin, and in my case, Chris, you mentioned Eddie Van Halen, huge influence, AC/DC, basically, people that were disruptors.
Yeah.
That was sort of my benchmark. I want to do that in the industry that I'm in.
Right. Right.
And I want to work. I need to make money, so I'm not going to be a complete, rebellion. But on the other end of it, I have to think that some people are going to place value on my desire to have as high quality as possible. And I've learned in my career that I don't want to work for the other people. I don't want to work for the people that want to phone it in.
Right.
I'm not the right fit.
Garbage in, garbage out. Yeah.
No, I can't sleep at night. And if I fail at something, I can sleep at night because at least I tried.
Well,
even if I failed.
I feel for me, the passion is in the journey of solving problems. And if everything is so smooth, then there's no fun. I mean, the fun is when you come across a big barrier and you're like, oh shit, what am I going to do? And then all of a sudden you come up with something and it's like, oh my God, this is fantastic. This is great. That gets you through the next one and the next one and the next one. And a project is really about those instances. And a lot of them that's what pulls the team together. That's the collaborative moment where you have a hurdle that you have to get over. And whether you come up with it or the sandwich guy does, you know what I mean? It's like a lot of times it happens. And that's what Orson Welles always said, was that he just captured the happy accidents. And
I mean, look, it's like, I think that's an ethos that I learned in Aspen as well. In my senior year of high school at Country Day, there was a semester that was built into the program where, through the teachers' approval, you kind of crafted your own semester's worth of work in one class.
Wow.
Whether that was advanced French, for example, or advanced history studies or whatever. I really, and Chris, I think this is largely due to you, but I think I wanted to teach a beginning filmmaker class. And so I went to a teacher there, a guy named Bart Pepitone.
I was just going to ask about him.
Yeah, Bart Pepitone, one of my favorites. And he fully backed me with, his supervision. And I taught a class on filmmaking. Garrett Fisher was in that class, who I'm not saying it's because of me that he became a filmmaker, but I don't think it hurt.
Right.
You know, and I really believe in that. I really believe in passing on information, which was so freely given to me growing up in Aspen. If I asked anybody for information, Nick DeWolf, they told me anything I wanted to know.
Yeah.
So that just was like a way of living, you know? And I still have that today. I mentor people who are coming up in the industry. I mentor people through NYU and through the American Society of Cinematographers, which I'm a member. And, you know, it's like anything that I know is not top secret. It's to be shared, because the way that I do my work is unique to me. And that goes for everybody. And that's what I was taught growing up there.
Well, you're not just influencing on the screen, you're influencing everywhere. Everything is...
But I wish more people in America were like that. I really do. I mean, it's always the whole space race thing, you know, everything's secret over here, blah, 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 trade secrets. And in reality, we all, you know, nick ideas here and there from each other anyway. That's really how it comes. You know, why are Elon Musk's rockets in the shape of the same rockets that were done in the V2 rockets from Werner von Braun, you know? I mean, because, well, he didn't come up with that idea. He took it from somewhere else. But yeah, if you mentor people and pass that knowledge on, we all evolve, in other words. And I think that's important. Again, I wish more people in America would be that way. Do that.
I agree with you. I think that's a whole separate topic, which we don't have we could talk about offline.
Sure.
But,
yeah.
You know, I think that it's something that I have the benefit of as a teenager, growing through my college years into young adulthood. I had a level of access to mentorship. It's something that was provided to me freely inside of the business of being a cinematographer. I mean, it was remarkable who I could call up and ask a referral on a resume for a camera operator, a question about something that they did in a movie. And I'm talking like big cinematographers, you know. I had a pretty open door policy for helping their own. And, you know, when I came out, after NYU, I went to the American Film Institute. I think I mentioned that I had a ton of debt coming out of NYU. So to avoid the government, I went to grad school, which was a good antidote for not paying your student loans, because they just kick them down the road, you know. Yeah. I couldn't figure out how to pay the first $80,000. I figured, what's another 40? Like, it was so out of reach for me. Yeah. So that got me back to California, where there was more work, and I went to the American Film Institute. I got my master's there, and I started, you know, talking to people at the American Society of Cinematographers, which is not a union, it's not a guild, it's basically a club of some of the largest cinematographers in the history of the art form. And this was back in a time when we were encouraged, like, hey, if you like a cinematographer's work, why don't you write him a letter and see if you could go hang out with them on set, and, you know, not quite intern, but intern, you know, and you could do that. And several of my classmates did, and worked with some of the biggest names, you know, in history of the art form. That is a completely lost art in the minds of people today that I found when mentoring, because I get the same advice.
Do you think maybe that's a generational thing? And the reason I ask that is I've had similar occasions where I've talked to you know, Gary Goldman, who is one of the top producers of animation in the world, really, or Bill Croyer, or some of these other folks, and they freely just talk to you and give you advice. But those guys are all, you know, they're at the age now where they're retired, and some of them are, you know, passing away and whatever else. Has that shifted down the next generation? That they taken that on, or are you saying that it hasn't?
Well, I think it's up for people like us to step into those shoes. I mean, I had a mentor. The first guy I learned animation with, my first first actual gig that I got paid for and helped with was on a Gus Van Sant film, doing the talking magazines. And it was just assisting him and helping him and learning that way on the shoot, in the camera, you know, working the camera stand, doing all that stuff. It's a very interesting way to learn rather than a school when you learn from a mentor or an internship kind of a program. You know what I mean? It is a little hands-on. It's a very more, I mean, I feel like everybody right now is online. So I don't know if you can really get that kind of a thing, you know? I mean, I guess it is for people that are open like you, Adam, to bringing in more people and doing stuff. And I think people need to do that. But it feels like as we move towards online more and more, it gets further and further away from that.
Well, I agree with both of you. I think it is a generational thing, and I think it's only been propagated by being online. I don't think it's gotten better. I think it's accelerated into more isolationism as a subconscious sort of layer to our existence. I mean, just raising teenage kids and having them all sit in the back seat of the car and they're all talking via their phones is the most bizarre thing that
and they're talking to each other too. That's the weirdest thing. We see that at Thanksgiving, you know. Yeah,
they're not talking to other people. They're communicating with each other. So this notion of like, well, just go ask. It's like, well, you know, like there's this reticence. And I think that part of that is generational, because like I have never had any fear about calling anybody or asking for something from somebody else, because I've had a lot of, you know, not always, but I've had quite a bit of success in getting a phone call back.
Yeah.
Well, there was a saying in sales back in my newspaper days, but they always say, don't say no for your customer. Let them say no to you.
Right, exactly.
And
don't
that's
let the answer be no right from the beginning. Yeah. I mean, nothing's happened yet. How can it be no? It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, you know?
Well, it's also like Jimmy Buffett at The Great Divide. You're
is.
talking about music. He's in music. You're a kid. He's inspired that you're a young kid asking him about music and stuff. So he's sharing. And that kind of a connection is what gets you to the next step. You know, I think if you aren't willing to do that, I don't know how you get to the next step without that. Because to me, that's all I mentor after mentor after mentor is how I didn't really do the technical university thing. I mean, I took some courses at UCLA, but that's not where I really got my degree. I got my degree in the camera room shooting all that stuff. You know what I mean? For Gus and other things. Thanks for listening. The authors of Growing Up Aspen would like to thank you and would like to also thank the Aspen Times and the Aspen Daily News for giving us materials for our book, Growing Up Aspen, Adventures of the Unsupervised, which you can get at twistandturnpress.com and any local bookstore. Thanks.